So, after you have now explained what market you're focusing on and how the competition looks within that market, it is important now to really explain to your VC investors how you want to dominate and enter that market. And that's why you have that section now, which is the business model slide. Usually, that slide could be one or two slides because there's a lot of things you need to cover. But first of all, why do you need to have the business model? Because it explains, especially to your VC investors, how you will monetize and how you will scale and how your path to profitability will look like. So that's why the business model slide must be included into your fundraising deck. So usually you start with your go-to-market strategy, and that really comprises out of two things. First of all, you're going to mention what is your marketing strategy and what is your sales strategy. You don't need to be very detailed, at least at that point. You can have backup slides for more details, but just explain in general what your general marketing and sales strategy are going to look like. Secondly, really make sure, and this is really comes into your future assumptions, that especially at the beginning, as a ClimateTech startup, with the AI component taken aside, it usually takes some time until you become profitable. So that's why your go-to-market strategy at the beginning is very experimental and iterative, because you really have to pivot and to see what works until you reached product market fit. This is really important to consider. And then finally, always tune your go-to-market strategy based on your financials and on your unit economics. After your go-to-market strategy, you can also consider internationalization. This is something you don't need to do, but if it makes sense for your startup and you need the international market, definitely mention it here. Otherwise, you can leave it out. So this is the second part of the business model, and that comes down to the revenue streams as well as your pricing strategy. So let's start with the revenue streams first. Make sure your VC investor understands what kind of revenue streams you're planning to obtain. It could be X as a service, so it could be software as a service for AI startups. It could be licensing, but it could be also data monetization, because if you have access to great data, you could anonymize those data and you could sell it to other potential customers, which is also a separate income stream. Especially at the beginning of your startup, that could be very valuable. But you also want to be careful because you don't want to share proprietary data, which you definitely want to keep as your competitive advantage in that case. So with that said, you can come to the price of your product. And there are several pricing mechanisms or pricing strategies, but there are two which are the most common and successful ones. The first one is the cost-based, where you calculate your cost and then you add a premium, which is going to be your, obviously your profit or your revenue in that case. And then you have the value-based. And this is the most recommended one, because if you can create a lot of value for your customer, then you can really charge as high as possible until the customer still has value from this pricing strategy. So this is the preferred solution and recommended solution. And well, finally, you have to explain, especially when it comes to those points, how do you create and maintain your gross margins that can support your costs, especially at the beginning of your startup stage. Those points are extremely important when you create your business model slides, but make sure that if you're an AI startup, you have to consider also the following. Consider, like I mentioned before, your go-to-market strategy, potentially internationalization, as well as revenue streams and your pricing strategy. And this is the most important thing for AI startups, explain AI's role in creating recurrent revenue. So whatever revenue model you have, explain how your AI helps to create value out of that. This is extremely crucial if you're an AI startup.